The sun has set, the world is quiet, and the ledger is finally open. I'm Zane, and tonight we uncover a story that was meant to stay hidden in the dark. Welcome to the Midnight Ledger. Bite. It kills. We are going back to the winter of 1959 into the iron heart of the Soviet Union to witness a mystery that has survived the fall of empires, the passing of decades, and the scrutiny of the world's greatest investigators. This is the story of the Dyatlov Pass, a journey into the freezing mouth of the Ural Mountains, where 10 experienced hikers set out to conquer a peak known by the local Mansi tribe by a name that proved to be a dark prophecy, Kholat Syakhl, the Mountain of the Dead. They were young, they were brilliant, and they were among the best trekkers in the country. To understand the horror that unfolded, we must first understand the souls who walked into that white void. Igor Dyatlov, the leader, was a 23-year-old engineering student at the Ural Polytechnic Institute. He was a man of logic, a man of maps and precision, destined for a brilliant career. Along with him were 7 other men and 2 women. Each was a high-level athlete, experienced in the brutal winters of the Russian wilderness. They were not amateurs looking for a thrill. They were Grade 2 hikers on their way to earning the highest certification available, the Grade 3. This trip was meant to be their masterpiece, a journey of 300 kilometers through the wilderness. Among them was Yuri Yudin, who would unintentionally become the most important witness to their life before death. A few days into the expedition, Yudin fell ill with chronic pain. On January 28th, at a small settlement known as North 2, he hugged his friends goodbye. As he watched them disappear into the blizzard, he didn't know he was embracing ghosts. He would be the only one to grow old, haunted for the rest of his life by a single, agonizing question: what killed my friends? In his final years, Yudin often said, "If I had a chance to ask God just one question, it would be, what really happened to my friends that night?" The group continued their march toward the mountain. Their recovered diaries tell a story of high spirits. They joked about the cold, they sang songs by the campfire, and they documented everything with their cameras. On January 31st, they reached the edge of the highland and built a cache for their extra food and equipment, preparing for the final ascent. On February 1st, they began moving through the pass. It seems they intended to cross the pass and camp on the other side, but the worsening weather and blinding snowstorms forced them to change plans. To avoid losing the altitude they had gained, Dyatlov made a fateful decision. They would pitch their tent right there on the high, exposed and treeless slope of the Mountain of the Dead. At around 5 p.m., they hammered their stakes into the frozen ground. They ate a cold dinner, wrote a final humorous entry in a collective newspaper they called the Evening Autoten, and prepared for sleep. It was a cold, routine evening in the wilderness, but sometime around midnight, the world ended for them. What happened in those dark hours is the core of the mystery. Forensic evidence discovered weeks later tells a story of absolute, primal panic. The tent was discovered by rescuers on February 26th, collapsed and half buried in snow. But when they looked closer, they realized the tent had been sliced open from the inside. They didn't even use the door. They were so desperate to escape that they used knives to rip through the canvas. They fled into a -30-degree blizzard. Some were in their socks, others were completely barefoot, and most were missing their heavy coats. Imagine the sensation of your bare skin touching frozen snow at 30 degrees below zero. In those temperatures, exposed skin begins to freeze in minutes. It is a pain that feels like liquid fire. Yet they didn't stop. The footprints, 9 sets of them, showed the group walking and running toward a forest at the bottom of the slope, nearly a mile away. They stayed together at first, moving in an orderly fashion despite the terror, which suggests they weren't running from a physical predator they could see, but perhaps a threat they felt in the very air around them. The search parties followed the tracks to the edge of the forest. Under a massive ancient cedar tree, they found the first 2 bodies, Yuri Doroshenko and Yuri Krivonishchenko. They were wearing only their underwear, lying next to the remains of a small fire. Their hands were charred with burns, not from the cold, but from the fire itself. It appeared they had stayed by the flames until they lost consciousness, or perhaps they had reached into the fire because they could no longer feel the heat in their frozen nerves. Most chillingly, the branches of the cedar tree were broken up to 5 meters high. The hikers had tried to